let's talk about self-fulfilling prophecies. A self-fulfilling prophecy is basically when you believe in something, and even though that is wrong, and because of that, you do something, some action follows, and that action actually makes this originally false belief become true. So what is a self-fulfilling prophecy? Now, the quote from Merton: "A false definition of the situation evoking a new behavior which makes the originally false conception true." First, you have a false definition of a situation. That means you assess something in the wrong way. You think something is this way, but actually it is the other way. And because of that wrong assessment of the situation, certain behavior follows. Yeah, you behave in a certain way, and that behavior, interestingly, makes this originally false conception become true. And that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Little schema around that. So we start off with a false belief on something. That false belief leads to action, and that action makes this originally false belief become true. And that can even reinforce the originally false belief. So you can end up in a little feedback loop where something becomes even more in a certain way, even though it wasn't like that to begin with. But here's a little video to show this in more detail.
Let's look at an example and start with your beliefs. Imagine you are the coach of a basketball team, and you observe your team on the first day. Chris and Joe are new members of your team. Chris reminds you of a famous player. Joe reminds you of an annoying boy from your high school years. Unconsciously, you decide what to expect of each one of them. Your beliefs influence your actions. When Chris enters the court, you are happy to see him. When he plays, you push him to do better, practice harder, stay an extra hour. If he makes a mistake, you explain to him how to improve. When Joe comes in, you hardly notice him. You're glad to see him score, but you don't give him much feedback and don't invest extra time in his training. When Joe does a mistake, you are a little annoyed. Your actions impact their beliefs about themselves. Chris feels you appreciate him, and he appreciates you in return. He believes in his own success. Joe feels you have little patience and appreciation for him. He does not believe in his own success. Their beliefs about themselves causes their actions toward you. Chris finds more and more joy in playing, and he never misses a training session. During the games, he gives 100% all the time. Joe finds less joy in playing than before and doesn't give his full effort in the games. He starts to miss the training sessions sometimes, which reinforces your beliefs about them. You see how Chris enjoys playing, how he trains hard and shows a fast increase in his performance. Joe seems not to be very motivated. His skills don't increase as much, and he starts to show up less. You knew it right away. Thank God your instincts were right.
So 2 criteria for something to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, according to Biggs, Michael Biggs, who happened to be one of my PhD advisors, a great guy. One of the things, we need to have like a causal sequence like this, like a false belief that is there, and that leads to some action, and that action actually makes this originally false belief become true. So we need to have that. And there's also some misapprehension. So there's a false belief at the beginning. If you have like a correct belief at the beginning, that's not a self-fulfilling prophecy. So something needs to be wrong at the beginning, then leading to some action which makes what was originally wrong become true. And interestingly, people often fail to realize that it was their false belief and their action that followed from it, which actually made the original belief come true. So it's very easy in a self-fulfilling prophecy to get validated about the original belief because, the result seems to be in line with that. But your original belief was false. And the only reason why it became true is because of the action that you did because you thought it wasn't false. Anyway, okay, let me talk about the self-fulfilling prophecy in the context of education, which is very fascinating. And believe it or not, I think about that before I teach this class. So the self-fulfilling prophecy in this case, and now I'm just using a schema that is like this outlined in Biggs 2009. So he has like a general thing that X believes that Y is P. That would be our false belief. Yeah. So I might believe that, let's say, a student is great, has great academic abilities. So I might believe that. While in fact, that might not be the case. This would be like a false belief. And that could lead to an action on my side. So because I think that, a student is great, I talk to that student in a different way. I take students seriously. I outline problems, I outline issues. I kind of talk through certain things instead of just brushing it to the side. So that can lead to people behaving in a certain way. So for example, when I think that you guys are very clever and that you guys are really good, I might be inclined to actually put more effort into preparing my teaching materials. That behavior can then actually finally make the originally false belief come true. So because of that, because you might get more attention from a teacher, you might feel the obligation to actually do more. And finally, it has the intended effect so that at the end of the day, the student becomes great. So what I just outlined is also something that we call the Pygmalion effect. It's really just another name for the self-fulfilling prophecy in the context of education. And there's a famous study by Rosenthal and Jacobson that kind of looked into that in more detail. It's an older study, but also nowadays you couldn't do this study anymore. Simply for ethical reasons, because stuff that they did is really borderline. So here's a little video on the studies conducted by Rosenthal and Jacobson on the Pygmalion effect.
The Pygmalion effect is also known as the Rosenthal experiment, named after a research of Robert Rosenthal at Harvard. In a first study, he challenged test subjects to coach rats through a maze. Half the group were told their rats were extremely intelligent and specifically trained. The other half were told that their rats were dumb. In fact, the rats were all the same. During the experiment, however, the smart rats performed well better than the dumb ones. This showed how the expectations of the coaches influenced even the performance of rats. Rosenthal then did the Pygmalion in School study together with Lenore Jacobson. At the beginning of the school year, a group of elementary school teachers were told that some of their new pupils had extraordinary talent and potential. This information, which was completely made up, was given about random average students in each class. All students had done the IQ test in advance. By the end of the year, the students that were described as more talented had significantly increased their performance in the IQ test compared to the rest of the class.
Okay, let me summarize what they did. Rosenthal and Jacobson, they studied the self-fulfilling prophecy in the context of a classroom, in a school. And in their research design, they had teachers overhear a conversation at the beginning of the academic year that some of their students, some of the children in their classes were late developers, but in fact that they were just about to spurt. Basically, teachers were made to believe that some of their students are very clever, that they have a high IQ score, even though they did not. So the teachers believed that this was based on an IQ test that had been done, while in fact it was just completely random. So now we have a false belief that the teacher thought that some of their students are great, have a high IQ score, while in fact they did not. Now, interestingly, at the end of the academic year, those 20 children that supposedly had a high IQ score, the teachers thought that, that was a false belief. Interestingly, those children actually did improve their IQ scores more compared to the other students throughout this year.
What the fuck?
So, in a way, the fact that the teachers thought that the students are intelligent somehow made those students become more intelligent. So what was going on? Basically, the prophecy became true because the teacher responded differently to these 20 students. And what the teacher did, the teachers provided more feedback. They kind of took questions more serious. They kind of followed up. They might have asked them more questions to begin with because they felt that these guys are clever. Yeah. Well, in fact, they were not. But that actually led to those students reacting in a certain way. And students started to react to this different treatment by putting more effort in it. So if you get the feeling that I think that you are very clever, which I do, we're all very clever. We showed that with the wisdom of the crowd. So I think you guys are all very clever. But anyway, so if you kind of get that feeling, it actually makes you put more effort into things. Because, and that's what other studies showed, you feel like you need to justify that trust that I give in you, that kind of assessment that I seem to make that you are intelligent. And that's what happened in the Rosenthal study. It's really fascinating. So it really helps to trick ourselves into thinking that the people that we are dealing with are more intelligent than they might be, because that makes us change our behavior, and that might actually help improve those other people. So they might actually become more intelligent as a consequence of it. Let me talk about another example, which is probably a little more straightforward. You might have heard about the so-called placebo effect. Now, what is the placebo effect? Basically, placebo is giving a patient a drug while in fact that drug doesn't do anything. And in all sorts of studies, this is how we evaluate the effectiveness of drugs. Even with the COVID situations, some people kind of get a treatment, think this is a treatment for it, but in fact it is a placebo. So it doesn't do anything. Coming back to our schema from Michael Biggs, X might believe that Y is P. In this case, it could be that the patient believes that a drug improves health. While in fact, it is a placebo. In fact, it just doesn't do anything. And thinking that you get a drug that improves your health might lead you to do certain things. It might make you think that you feel better, and because of that, you do more sports. So I'm feeling great. I'm getting a pill that allows me to become healthier. I start doing more sport because I'm feeling it already. And now in the next step, because I do more sport, that might actually improve my health. So you see again, like how an originally false belief leads to a certain action, and that action then makes the originally false belief become true, even though it was false in the first instance. Okay, let me go on and talk about the self-fulfilling prophecies now in a group setting. And that's another case that you probably know. The classic example here is the one of a bank run. A bank run is the situation where you think that your bank might be insolvent, that the bank goes bust. And what you do, what is a reasonable thing to do in this situation? It's to go to the bank and withdraw your money. Because if the bank goes bankrupt, you might not get your money back. So it does make sense to run to the bank and withdraw all your money. So now the interesting thing is that exactly that behavior of running to the bank and withdrawing all your money, if everybody would do that, that would make most of the banks in this world go bankrupt. Let's put this in this schema again. So now one person, call that person X1, might believe that the bank is insolvent. That means the bank doesn't have any money anymore. Well, in fact, that is not true. Well, in fact, the bank has money. But that might make that person withdraw money from the bank. And because that person withdraws money from the bank, another person might see that and think, well, this other guy withdrew money from the bank and thinks that the bank is insolvent. Maybe I should withdraw money from the bank. So now the second person withdraws money from the bank as well, and that might actually reinforce the beliefs of the third person that the bank is insolvent, while in fact it is still solvent. It still has money. But then that person withdraws money from the bank, and so on and so forth. Yeah, you see where I'm going with this. Because if everybody does that, if everybody runs to the bank, withdraws money, well, that actually makes the bank insolvent. Okay, lastly, let me talk about another example of the self-fulfilling prophecy. And now I'm coming back to the cultural market studies, the music lab studies that you guys already read, and we talked about it in a previous video. Studied by Duncan Watts and others. And in this study, they created this website, Music Lab, where participants could listen to and rate and download songs by unknown bands. Like over 16,000 people signed up and participated in it. And Salganic and others, they controlled the information that the participants received. Essentially, how many downloads did a song already have, or how highly rated was a song. This is sort of the design, just a reminder, people went to the website, they listened to the songs, and some folks were sent in the independent condition where they just listened to the songs and then rated the songs, while others were sent into the social influence condition where they could see how others had rated the song and how many downloads the song already had. But now they also did something else. So they also did something sneaky. So after a while, after a certain amount of days, in certain runs of the experiments, they flipped things around. So what do I mean by that? Well, actually, they made the song that at that point in time was the most liked song. They gave it the rating of the least liked song. And in reverse, they gave the song that was the least liked the ratings of the most liked song. And so on. Yeah? So they literally just inverted the ratings. Okay, so this is what happens. This is the point in time where they sneakily flip things around. So there you see, this is like the most popular song. Yeah, and in an unchanged world, they didn't change anything. You see the download numbers, they continue to rise just like that. Yeah, but now they compare that with the situation where they flip that around, where the most downloaded song suddenly looked like it was the least liked and least downloaded song. And in these cases, you see the download numbers went up at a much slower rate. So artificially making something look unsuccessful actually made it less successful in the future. But there's also the reverse. So here we have the least downloaded song, that was, in their list, the 48th song. And now they gave that song the ratings of the most popular, most downloaded song. And what happened, as you see in the dashed lines, it really starts to pick up. So when you kind of make something look very popular, even though it isn't, it suddenly becomes more popular. So inverting the ratings of those songs made the artificially highly rated songs receive higher ratings. And artificially lowly rated songs then consequentially also received lower ratings. Okay, so a self-fulfilling prophecy is when we have something that is false. It's like a false belief into something. But that false belief triggers a certain action. And that action, that interestingly makes the false belief become true. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you can actually use that yourself. You can trick yourself into a false belief leading to an action, which then makes that false belief become true. So next time you don't understand a reading, think that you are actually very clever. Yeah? And because of that, you might then not give up on that reading, but try to go through with it. Think that you are pretty clever. We know that. Wisdom of the crowd. We know you guys are all clever. So think more along those lines, and then you might not be discouraged by it. And you then go and read it again. You spend more time on it. You read it another time, and you don't give up on it. And because of that, you might then eventually understand it, which would only be proof that you were clever in the first instance, even though you might not have been. Anyway, so that is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
If you're averaging a 2.0 GPA, then you can achieve a 4.0 GPA. if you're already on a 4.0 GPA, then you can climb to the top of the class. You'll probably be thinking, that's not possible. If I can ask for one thing while you're watching this, please, watch it with an open mind. Do not set self-imposed limitations on yourself. You can't change the past, but you can change the future. Just because you've been getting C grades your whole life, it doesn't mean that it has to continue that way. I've done it myself. I destroyed my self-imposed limitations and stopped studying like a D grade student and started studying like an A grade student. And the rest is history. I didn't believe that I was smart enough to achieve incredible grades. I thought that the top performing students in my class were just naturally more gifted than me. They could do things that I couldn't. And because I had placed those self-restricting limits on myself, I didn't even try to study and get good grades. Because what was the point? I didn't believe I could achieve them anyway. Exam after exam, I'd get average grades. Sometimes I'd fail. Sometimes I'd scrape a pass. I always thought I wasn't capable of achieving A grades. I always thought I wasn't smart enough, or that studying just wasn't one of my strengths. But it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I thought I wasn't capable of achieving incredible grades, then of course I was never going to achieve them. I set myself up for failure every time. After graduating, I was rejected from all the universities I applied for because my grades just weren't good enough. I didn't qualify. I felt rejected, depressed, miserable. But I made a decision. I would do something about it. It was only after I started to believe that I was capable of achieving extraordinary things that my actions started to match my dreams. I believed that I could achieve A grades, so I started studying like an A grade student. I started to work harder. I started to live life with intention. I started to achieve things that just a year previously I didn't think were possible.